Good morning, students. This side Swati ma'am, welcoming you to watch this educational video relating with your biology subject. Today we are starting in science book our first unit, chapter number 5, the fundamental unit of life. This is first part video. Okay, so let's get started. Okay, students. So around you, what you are able to observe, some living organisms and some non-living organisms. So categorizing organisms in two parts, living and non-living. Taking some example, suppose observe around you what you are able to see. The living organisms, we can see the plants, animals and microorganisms which we are not able to see with our naked eyes. Now moving to the non-living organisms or non-living things. The door, you're sitting in the room, the same room is having door. The pen which I am using, okay, this is also non-living thing. And the phone in which we are using different apps, that is also non-living thing, etc. These all are the examples of living thing and non-living thing. Now try to understand how you are able to categorize them in living thing and non-living thing by knowing the characteristics of living organisms. Now taking some characteristics of living organisms: growth, breathe, movement, intake of nutrients, reproduction, excretion. If we are able to see some characteristics from this, we are able to identify that the thing is living organism. Suppose what we understand from the word growth. If we see a human, in human, firstly we are able to see a child or baby, and then when they are growing, they become adult, younger and old also. Okay, that type of things we can call as a growth. Now we talk about breathe, you can say respiration process. What we do generally in respiration, as we know, in respiration or breathing process, we are taking oxygen inside our body with the help of nose and exhaling CO2 from our body. Okay, this is also essential process. Plants, animal, both the things are doing breathing process. Now moving to the next one, movement. If we see, animals are generally moving from one place to another place, but in plants generally we are not able to see the movement very fastly or easily. Okay, now moving to next one, that is intake of nutrients. For doing any kind of activity in living organisms, generally what we require energy, and that energy is coming from nutrients only. Okay, when we are taking any kind of food material, that is providing us energy. Now moving to the next one, that is reproduction. It is also essential part of identifying that the living organism is having this characteristic. Now reproduction means to produce new organisms. Okay, now excretion, if we talk about, generally when we are eating any kind of food, this food is having some of the waste material. After taking nutrient from the food, the waste material which comes out, this process will be called as a excretion, in which the waste materials come out of the body or cells. Now we are able to generally categorize the living things and non-living things very easily. Okay, now taking one more example. Now in which room you are sitting, okay, that room is made up of what thing? It is made up of brick, cement, door, windows, etc. things. Okay, now if I ask you what is the basic thing required to build this room, what you will call? Like the first thing which is required to construct this room or to make the wall of one side, what is the first thing required? We required brick. Okay, so we can say that to construct the wall or the room or complete room, the first basic thing which is required is a brick. Okay, now if first brick is not there, you are able to construct the room. Think, if the brick is not there, we are not able to construct the whole wall or whole room. So now relating this example with the living organisms. Okay, now relating with the living organisms, we can understand how living organisms are formed with an interesting experiment which was done earlier in back with the help of scientists that we are going to learn. Now continuing with an interesting experiment in earlier time, as we know that in back 19th century, what happened generally in the year of 1665, there was a scientist named Robert Hooke. What he did, he just take one cork cell. Now what we understand with the cork cell, we understand with the help of cork cell that you all have seen tree. That tree is having wooden portion. That wooden portion will be called as a bark. That bark portion, bark of tree, helps to make the bottle cap. You are able to see the wine bottle. That wine bottle is having made up of that bark of tree. That bark of tree, that cork, that bottle cap is called as a cork. Okay, now we are taking cork cell. How we can take that cork cell? We can take thin slice of cork cell by like sliding one thin layer and taking that layer and examining. Now how we will examining? At that time there was not that much of technology present, so what did scientists did, he made a self-designed microscope. That microscope is called as a primitive microscope. Now with the help of that primitive microscope, he take that slice and put under the microscope, and under that microscope when he put, he observed what, this type of structures. Okay, that this type of structure will be called as a honeycomb structure. Now this honeycomb structure, when scientists observed in the Latin, he observed that this is a little room. Okay, inside this one dotted structure is present, that little room in Latin called as a cell. Okay, now this little structure, little circle structure is called as a nucleus. Now this little room we are able to identify is a cell, and in different if we take another experiment or another thing that is also having some sort of structure. Okay, now this single thing will be called as a cell, and that whole structure is called as a honeycomb structure or a little rooms. Now what we understand from the word cell, the basic unit of life. Okay, now what we can say, we can say that if the like whole organism is formed, the first basic thing is required is a cell.